Hi friends, I've built a really useful loot zones map for Storm Point, and this shows you all of the different tiers of loot zones on Storm Point. Looking at the map, you can see where all the good loot zones are, denoted by the purple areas. You can then see where the mid zones are with the blue areas and where the basic loot zones are with the grey areas. And you can use this map to help you decide where to drop and how to rotate. You see, typically you would either want to land in a high tier loot area or try to rotate through one. If you compare Storm Point to the other maps as of season 11, the high tier loot zones are generally more spread out on Storm Point. You can also see there aren't as many high tier loot zones as the other maps. I've actually created a table to compare the number of high, mid and basic tier loot zones on all of the maps in Apex Legends as of season 11. Interestingly, you can see here that Storm Point actually has the lowest number of high tier loot zones at 8, while World's Edge has the most at 20. Storm Point does have the second highest mid tier loot zones with 11, just behind King's Canyon on 16. Storm Point does have the highest number of basic tier loot zones though. It's also interesting to see that Storm Point has the second highest total number of points of interest behind King's Canyon. Although bear in mind a lot of these on King's Canyon are much smaller points of interest compared to Storm Point. I should also say a lot of the basic areas are just connecting areas, which there seem to be a lot of on Storm Point given the island type of setup we've got. I do think there is a reason why there aren't as many high tier loot zones on Storm Point, and this is simply because it's a new map. If you think about it, a lot of the high tier loot zones on World's Edge have come after all of the map changes, such as Rampart's Big Mord or Fragment East. So I do fully expect Storm Point to develop over the coming seasons, and we'll see an increase in high tier loot zones. Additionally, because you can get attachment, ammo and other loot from wildlife, of which there's a lot around the map, it makes it a lot easier to pick up loot if you're short. So in some ways this makes up for the fact that there aren't as many high tier loot zones on Storm Point. If we go back to the Storm Point loot map, you can see where the high tier loot zones are located. Obviously it's better to land in a high tier loot zone, but as I mentioned with previous wildlife, you could just land in a basic loot zone and then head across to prowler or spider dens and use the smart loot system to improve your loot. Because Storm Point is so big, I do find more people tend to hot drop. So generally, the nearest big point of interest to the start of the dropship is normally the best hot drop location. Sometimes if you drop later on Storm Point, you might find a lot of squads are hot dropping because the map's so big, and therefore when you get to your first fight, there aren't many teams left. There are a few locations that always seem to have squads landing there. I find Barometer is one of the most popular places to land on Storm Point, and I always find at least one team there, and if it's on the drop path, there's normally a lot more than just one team. So it makes it a good place to go if you want an early fight. The same goes for Lightning Rod and Shipfall. Another top tip for a place I like to land is North Pad. I can guarantee if you land there, you'll get purple Evo shields. Check out my video on how to use the wildlife to level up your Evo armor, but basically the reason I say this is because there's always so many flyers at North Pad that you can quickly upgrade your Evo shields by taking them out. I hope this helps you better understand where the best places to loot on Storm Point are, and hopefully this will help you with your drops and your rotations. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.